Cool. So first we start off with a blank Word doc, right? Everybody on the same page so far? Cool. So resume has three different parts, right? Resume has, just like an essay would, a resume has a beginning, middle, and end. This is your title. This is basically like meat of the resume, and this is the dessert. Now, what I mean by this is recruiters are mainly going to be focused on one specific part of your resume, right? The meat of your resume. However, if they're very interested in your resume, then they will focus in on your dessert. Your dessert, we'll talk about in a little bit, right? But first, one thing that really messes up a lot of people when writing resumes and when submitting resumes to recruiters and stuff like that is the beginning title, right? Now, when focused on title, there are two ways you can do it, right? Starts off with your name, obviously. Now, what else do you put on your resume, on your title? You put your name and what else?
Schools.
Not yet. That's that, but it does come into play. But what's next after name?
Address.
What's that?
Address.
Yes, address, right? Address. Now, what's actually more important than your address?
Contact.
Contact information. Yes, correct. So, address, and then phone number. Actually, what I would do is put the email address before phone number. Email, and then phone number. Now, this is a good, what's up?
You get judged on your email, the name of the email.
You absolutely get judged on your email. That's a very good question. So if your email is like, you know, Bronx, Poppy 914, Poppy Chulo 914, something like that, you know, it's gonna be judged, right? However, if your email address is, let's say, your work email address, right? Even more subtle. If you put your work email address, recruiters aren't necessarily going to want to email you at your work email address, right? So you want to make a really professional sounding email address, first.lastname, last.firstname @gmail.com. Absolutely free to do. And it's very, very good to have a professional email address. It's a very good question. Thank you for bringing that up. However, another subtle thing that you will get judged on, now that we're on the topic, is your address, right? So let's say if, let's say you live in the Bronx, right?
Yeah.
So I used to live in Westchester, right? It's closer to, I used to live in White Plains, right? So I used to apply to positions in New York City, and people would be concerned with my commute.
Oh.
You know, even though White Plains is like 40 minutes away from Manhattan, right? 40 minutes away from Midtown Manhattan. A lot of people were like, oh my God, he lives in White Plains. Like, how the hell is he going to come down here every single day?
Yeah.
And I'm used to it. You know, I went to school in the Bronx, and I hung out in Manhattan a lot. So it really wasn't a big deal for me. But to recruiters, it was a huge deal. They were like, why would we go for someone in Westchester when we could just get someone just as qualified in Lower Manhattan, right?
Right?
Right. Like, for example, I told you guys I used to work on this Wall Street firm called Jane Street Capital, right? Jane Street Capital was Lower Manhattan Financial District, right? They were like, how are you going to come all the way from White Plains down to Lower Manhattan every morning by like 8:30 in the morning, right? That was a legitimate interview question for me because I had my address as my Westchester address. So it's actually completely up to you guys if you want to put an address on your resume, right? So if you guys live far from the city, let's say like Far Rockaway or Bronx or something like that, sometimes you may want to be careful with putting your address out there, right? Make sense? Cool. Now, email, phone number, absolutely very important for anyone to get in touch with you, right? Now, the way that it should be formatted, right, is that this is a good format for people who don't have a lot to put on their resume. Does that make sense? So, you have a question?
No.
So, name, address, email, phone number. That's 4 lines, right? That's 4 lines. So you're basically ending like right here, you know. However, if you have more work experience, the best way to format it is name, and let's say 14 to 16 point font. And it's up to you to bold it.
Did they look also for the font sizes?
What's that?
Did they look for the font sizes also, or bolding, or?
That's a good question. With font sizing, you just don't want to put anything too crazy, right? I would stick with Times New Roman or Arial or anything like that, anything basic, right? I wouldn't necessarily put like script or something that's very loud because it's not cute to recruiters, right? Unless you're like in design. Yeah, it's not professional,
It's not
right?
too formal, right? It's not
Correct.
formal.
Correct. Same vein as having like a email address that's very casual, right? It's not professional, right? You basically want to have your resume be as serious as it possibly can. I mean, it's a job. There's really nothing too fun about it, right? So, your name should be in 14 to 16 point font, bold. And then what you can do is if you have a lot of work experience, is you can put your address, put a bullet point, and then put your email, and then put another bullet point and put your phone. So instead of using 4 lines, you're only using 2 lines, right? And this can actually be a smaller font than your name. Make sense?
So in terms of the spacing,
Yeah.
your resume just has to be 1 page, or
Yeah.
Your resume has to be 1 page.
just 1 page?
There's no way that you can go above 1 page.
Uh,
However, it's actually harder to write a 1-page resume if your work experience isn't enough, right? So this is why I'm showing you guys 2 different ways to format it, right? Now, if some of you guys in the class might have a longer resume, right? Your resume should never surpass 1 page, right? Unless, like, for example, you're like a president or CEO, and then you have like a long resume, right? Another excuse to have a good long resume is something called a CV. A CV is for academia. It's not for anything professional. So a CV is basically like a resume, but it's used for professors and PhD candidates and things like that. Basically, it shows like their work experience and their academic experience, like research and teaching experience, things like that, right? Everybody on the same page with this? It's cool? All right, great.
just
What's that?
it's okay, so.
Are you good? All right, so let's talk about what goes right after. Thank you. Let's go right after your name and contact information. What goes next? Anyone have an idea? Someone said it before. School, right? School. Yeah. So right after your title, which should have your name, contact information, questionably your address, right? Right underneath title, we'll talk about school. Now, this is only applicable to the people in this room because you guys are in school at the moment, right? However, if you guys, like, let's say 5-10 years down the road after graduating school, school needs to then be placed on the bottom of your resume, not at the top, right? Reasoning behind this is because you're fresh out of college, right? People need to see where your credentials are immediately. However, there's a certain point in time in your lives where your resume will have much more work experience than school experience, right? School experience meaning like internships and, you know, college degrees, things like that, all right? So it's perfectly normal for you to replace school with the bottom priority because at a certain point in your life, once you accumulate professional experience, it's going to be mainly focused on your professional experience. Does that make sense? Hey, let's go.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Cool. So, with school is actually something that can make or break the resume, right? So, as we talked about, professional email address, professional looking resume, right? But with school, yes, you have your degree, but if you have a poor GPA that you have to put on your resume, it might actually be a disqualifier, right? And we're going to talk about how to get around that. Cool? So, with school, this is how it should be formatted. So, first things first, school name. Comma, location. And this will be bold. School name, location. Next thing under there would be major. And expected graduation. Next thing under that would be GPA. Scary thing for possibly some of you guys in the room, right? GPA. GPA is a killer because a lot of people, especially in recruiting, a lot of people view something lower than a 3.0 or 2.5 to be very detrimental to hiring someone or to even interviewing someone, right? Because it shows, not to say that this is always true, right? But it shows that if someone doesn't take the responsibility to do well in school, what's to say that they would take the responsibility to do well at work, right? It's kind of like how when you guys asked me about the credit check, right? When you guys asked me like, why do I have to do a credit check if I'm getting this job? Reason is, if your credit is low, what's to say that you would exercise the same or more caution at work, right? It just gives you a snapshot of your personality, right? So although you have to reveal a GPA, because believe me, no GPA is just as bad as a bad GPA, right? No GPA is just as bad as a bad GPA. The reason behind it is because if you're not going to say your GPA, it's kind of like the recruiter kind of already knows that your GPA is bad, right? Recruiter will also assume that your GPA is worse than what it actually is, right? No GPA tells me your GPA is like failing or it's below a 2.0, when in reality it could be a 2.9 or a 3.5, right? You know, it makes sense. Now, I'm skipping a little bit. So, school name, Professional Business College. Location, New York, New York. Major, put your major. Put like AA, right, because it's an associate's degree. AA, and whatever your major is. Expected graduation date, let's say 2013, 2014, right? It gives someone a good snapshot into what you're academically experienced at and how long you've been academically experienced, right? So if your graduation date is 2012 or 2013, the recruiter can make assumptions that your major in business management, you've taken enough courses in business management to have an idea of what that entails, right? Now, GPA. GPA is your grade point average when it comes down to everything you've done at college, right? And this, you know, even though you're focused on business management, there are classes that you guys might have to take that aren't necessarily about business management, like business math or English or sciences, anything like that, right? Things that don't necessarily apply directly to management. There are things that are like core requirements, right? Like you guys have all had to take these core requirements even possibly before even taking business courses, right? At the school that I went to a Catholic university. I had to take 2 religious courses before I took anything in regards to business, right? So when you take into account that, I personally had to take religious courses, science courses, and English courses when all I wanted to do was learn about business and learn about human resources and learn about finance, right? Because I had to take a math course that wasn't related to finance, right? Different things. Or an econ course, right? So if you take all of that, it's natural to have your GPA be a little bit lower because you might not necessarily have as much interest in other courses as others, right? But your GPA has to be revealed. Now, the trick to this is you reveal your GPA. Let's say your GPA at the moment is a 2.5, right? To be honest, to a lot of recruiters, that might seem subpar. That might seem like, wow, this person isn't necessarily doing too hot in school. A 2.5 is like a C average, right? C minus in some schools, right? Now, that has to mean that you failed a couple courses or you've just consistently done a C minus average throughout your college career. Now, what you can do, instead of putting your regular GPA, is put your cumulative GPA. I mean, not cumulative GPA, but your major GPA, right? Your major GPA is everyone's savior. It's my savior on my resume too, right? My major GPA is a 3.94, right? But that's nowhere near my cumulative GPA, right? Does that make sense to you guys, right? So GPA, what you can do is you can put cumulative GPA and then put major GPA. Now, if you are truly embarrassed about your GPA, right? If your GPA isn't necessarily too hot and you don't want to really reveal it at all, right? You only have to just put your major GPA. Make sense? Right? Chances are your major GPA is like at least somewhat better than your cumulative GPA, right? Even if you guys are at like a 3.5, 3.7, chances are your major GPA is more like a 4.0. You know what I'm saying? And so it's even if you're fine with your cumulative GPA, put both anyways, right? Because your major GPA is still going to be higher than whatever your cumulative GPA is. Cool? Any questions so far on this?
So the cumulative GPA is the total GPA that you have?
Total GPA. So this is including classes that are like English and mathematics, but that that are included in the classes you've taken in business, like HR management or small business management or management in general.
So what is the regular standard GPA? I mean the highest point.
Highest point is a 4.0, right?
Okay.
So to put it to scale, like a 4.0 equals an A or A plus, right? A 1.0 is an F, and anything in between, right? So a 2.0 is like in certain colleges a 2.0 is a C, but sometimes it could be a D, right? It depends. It depends on the grading scale. So if any of you guys pull up your professional business college handbooks, you should have like an explanation as to what your GPAs would look like if you were to calculate them. If you log into, let's say, like your student portal, if you guys have one, right? A student portal should tell you what your GPA is at the moment. If your student portal doesn't, your advisor should absolutely know, right? That's your advisor's job. He or she has to know. So it's good to calculate your GPA just because if you don't put it on there, recruiters might assume that it's bad. And if you don't know what your GPA is, recruiters think that that's a big red flag as well. So what I would obviously what you guys all have to find out before you hand in this resume to me is that you have to find out what your cumulative and major GPAs are. It's on your transcript, right? Yeah, exactly.
So you need both or just one?
I would highly recommend to put both, right? Because this is for my purposes, not for like external jobs, right? However, if you put just cumulative GPA, you will get points off, right? I'm warning you guys right now, don't put just your cumulative GPA because your major GPA will always be better than your cumulative, right? This makes sense mathematically. What's that?
I didn't try to get a GPA. So I have a bachelor degree and I have enjoyed
right.
to university for my master.
Right.
So, but I don't have GPA, any GPA.
Right.
That is the problem, right?
So it's like pass-fail. It's pass-fail, right? That's a very good question. Let me get back to you on that because if there's no GPA, what I would specify is you took classes pass fail and then got a bachelor's from that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I would put a reason why there's no GPA. So like, I wouldn't not put any kind of GPA. I would just say like GPA not calculated due to pass fail program or something like that. You know, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. Any other questions? Cool. All right, so we're done with basically the title, right? Title includes your contact information, your name, and your school, right? That's a snapshot in terms of what you're about academically, right? Your meat of your resume is your professional experience, right? And I'll tell you this one tidbit, right? There's no such thing as no professional experience, right? For some of you guys who may have said like, you know, I've never worked a day in my life or something like that. That's the only way that you guys would never have any real professional experience. You know what I'm saying? Like, if any of you guys just kind of just coasted through life and just got money from your parents all the time, right, until you got to this point in your life, you know, that's awesome. You know, that's actually really, really great. However, chances are most of you guys have at least done some sort of professional experience. What I mean by that is retail, babysitting, working in a restaurant. All of these things signify professional experience. Even though you want to work in an office after graduating from professional business college, putting on a resume that you were a waitress or putting on a resume that you worked at a Foot Locker or something like that, this all provides a good snapshot into your interpersonal skills, which are actually arguably more important than your actual like professional skills, right? So for example, like, remember that example I gave you guys a couple weeks back in terms of like this guy had everything on his resume correct. He had all of the professional expertise, like he was really great at certain programs that we really, really needed, right? However, he was a total asshole, right? Who really wants to work with an asshole, right? Nobody wants to work with an asshole, right? So if you think about it in this sense, what's more important, right? Should we hire someone who we feel like we like personally, who we can train on the job, or do we hire the person who we feel like we wouldn't be able to work with every single day, right? Because as I talked to you guys about, the people that you work with, think about it, you work 40 hours a week, right? And that's going away. It's a myth now. It's a myth to think that people just work 40 hours a week. For example, including this job, I work about 55 hours a week, right? So I see you guys more than I see my mom, right? 3 hours a week, 6 hours a week, because I teach 2 classes. So I don't spend 6 hours a week with my mom. I spend 6 hours a week here teaching, right? I spend 45 hours a week at the Huffington Post, right? This is on average. So the people that you're going to be seeing at work are people you're going to be seeing more than your friends and family and interests and hobbies all combined, right? You only have 2 days out of the week to focus on what you're really interested about. You have 5 days out of the week to really just go to work and then come home and then scrap something to eat and then do it again until Friday, right? It's kind of sad to think about, but I mean, if you think about it in the sense like the people who you work with, you're going to get to know better than most people in your lives. So you want someone who's cool, right? You want someone who you can talk to and who you can work with, right? So interpersonal skills make a big difference. And even if you feel like working at Foot Locker doesn't matter, it absolutely does. It shows that you have great customer service. It shows that you know how to talk to people. It shows that you know how to have a general understanding of how to sell something, right? And how to be persuasive, right? These are all things that you must bring out of your job descriptions, right? So what do you do? What do you do? You're a home health aide. Got it. Very tough, right? Very tough job to have. And this is probably, you know, one of the toughest jobs that people have at the moment. So when you talk about what people's jobs are, I'm sure a lot of you guys have different experiences when it comes to different opportunities, right? Like what do you do right now? Do you have a job? Did you have a job prior to coming to school?
Me right now?
Yeah.
I work with your friends and stuff. sell luggage.
Stock manager.
Sell luggage.
Luggage. Cool, cool. What about you?
Restaurant.
What's that?
Restaurant.
Restaurant. Cool, cool, cool. What about you?
Grocery.
Grocery store. So very, very different, different experiences. How to translate that into something that's useful is very, very easy, because all of you guys have different skill sets that you can transfer over to the corporate world, as you would say it, right? So, talk about a job, right? This is your meat. Now, first things first, no matter what your job is, this is how you should format your resume in terms of listing a job out, right? So you put company name, location, and then you put your title. Titles can be kind of tricky, right? You can work titles to be your benefit, to your benefit, right? Title, and then all the way on the right, you put how long. How long you've been there. So an example of this would be, let's say, December DEC.10 to present. Right? So that's how you should format every single job on your resume, right? Company name, location on the right, title, how long you've been there on the right. Cool? Company name is bold. Title is italics. What you do with location and what you do with how long you've been there is completely up to you. That's your artistic freedom, if you have any during your resume, right? Everyone cool? Now, here comes actually probably the most challenging part of a resume, any resume, right? The bullets that occur below your job, right? Explaining what you did and explaining how that benefits, right? Like, so what a lot of people will put is this, like, let's say I worked at McDonald's, right? A lot of people on their resume, when they're writing their resume, will literally put this. Took orders. Don't write this down, though. Do not write this down. It's just like an example. Took orders. Prepared food. Came to work on time. Now, when you're applying for a job in an office building, right, how many of these things really apply to your job or the job that you want? None of it, really, right? Like, come to work on time, that's a given. Prepared food, you're not preparing food here, right? Took orders. Hopefully, you're not the type of person who just takes orders. Hopefully, you're a leader, right? That's what everybody wants in the company, right? Hopefully, you're someone who has vision to think for themselves or to kind of make decisions for themselves instead of just taking orders, right? Now, let's break down what someone at McDonald's does, right? McDonald's is probably one of the most successful companies of all time, right? Does really well during a recession, does well during a non-recession, right? Everybody loves having McDonald's, right? So if you think about it this way, McDonald's, in a certain sense, every single McDonald's has very high traffic, right? We're going to change this up. So instead of took orders, what I'm going to write is
Service.
what's that? I just made this up. This is nowhere near in my lesson plan. Basically, instead of saying I took orders, you can say managed multiple orders during heavy traffic periods to efficiently serve clientele. It's the same exact thing, right? Instead of saying took orders, managed multiple orders during heavy traffic periods to efficiently serve clientele. See how much better that sounds? Right? What a lot of people do, and what a lot of people who have resumes in this room right now, right? If I told you guys to write me a resume right now, a lot of you guys would sell yourself short, right? In terms of what you do. What you do is important, right? They wouldn't be paying you any money. You wouldn't have a job right now if the things that you were doing weren't important, right? Or weren't necessary for the business to run, right? Nobody gets paid for just doing nothing all day. Unless you're a security guard. But security guards, generally speaking, security guards are there for your protection, right? So they're there for an important reason. Now, I'm going to give you guys a formula to do this really well, right? This is a very top secret thing. But it's very, very important that you guys take this formula and apply it to the rest of your resume, right? What this formula is the following. For those of you guys who can't read my very messy handwriting, basically the formula is this. Strong action verb, emphasis on strong, strong action verb plus what you did plus benefit equals awesomeness. This is no lie. This is exactly what I use when I consult a lot of people with their resumes. This is exactly what I use to turn anything that someone possibly could do in their profession to something that sounds fantastic, right? So strong action verb plus what you did plus benefit equals awesomeness. It's a 3-point formula. It's very easy. You already know what you did. This is what you guys focus on when you're writing your resume right now, right? What you did is what you put on your resume. It's one part of the 3-point formula. What you have to start off with is a strong action verb. What is an action verb? Does anyone know what an action verb is? Action verb is doing something, right? A strong action verb is doing something seemingly well, right? So instead of saying took is an action verb. You're taking something, right? Instead of saying took orders, you can say managed orders, right? Because let's break down again what someone at McDonald's does. When you order your filet-o-fish, right? You go there and you're like, I want a filet-o-fish and fries. This person then has to type it in without error and then go and make sure that your order is ready and help out everyone else in the back room, right, to get your order as fast as they possibly can. Charge you money by utilizing technology that McDonald's puts forth for you to do that. Charges you money and then has to give you your receipt and possibly change if anyone here still pays by cash, right? Gives you accurate change, or else he or she will get in trouble for having a short draw, right? Think about the many steps that someone has to go through in order to execute one order, right? It's kind of crazy because next time anyone ever gets pissed off at your McDonald's lady or man who messes up your order, think about everything that they have to go through, right? Think about what they have to really do to perfection hundreds of times a day in and day out, right? So a strong action verb is instead of saying, I worked with a ton of people, you could say, collaborated with a ton of people. Same exact thing, but it sounds way better, right? Instead of saying, I put this stuff together, or I was an event planner, you can say, I coordinated events, right? Coordinated sounds way better than I was just an event planner. Right? Coordinated events, blah, 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 blah. Right? Strong action verbs are very, very important. They will make or break your resume. Okay? So every single bullet point that you guys put in your resume to describe what you did has to start off with a strong action verb. Okay? Managed, collaborated, coordinated, things like that. It's only a coincidence that they start off with C's, but I'm sure you guys can find others that don't start with C's. What you did, simplest part of your equation, right? I sold luggage, right? I took orders. But just change that in the sense that it shows that what you did was very important to the firm, right? And the benefit, right? So if you're a salesman, right? If anyone's a salesman, so say, instead of saying sold things, right? You can say advised clientele, right? Because nobody likes salespeople, right? Like when you get called, or when someone comes to your door, or when someone comes to your job or your house or anything like that, and it's like, hey, why don't you buy this? Buy this. Like you should buy this, right? It's never cool. I hate people who try to sell me things, right? But when you're advising someone, it's completely different, right? It's like, you and I work together so you can purchase this from me, right? This is something that was very, very, very important when I worked at Apple. I didn't work at Apple Corporate, I worked at the Apple Store. So if anyone walked into the Apple Store and saw someone in a blue shirt, that was me through my college years. That's what I did for money, right? When people came in, it was never our job to sell. It was our job to advise, right? See the difference? So selling is being pushy. Selling is, you should buy this because it's really expensive and it would do our company good if you really bought this. I don't care if it helps you out, but you should buy this because this helps me out, right? Advising is, you should buy this because you can create family photos on this computer. You can do Photoshop on this computer. You can do anything like this. So you create a picture like, this is what you can possibly do on this computer. If you want to do more, then you just have to spend more money. But whatever you decide to do, it's your choice, right? Advising is much, much better, right? So when you say I sold things doesn't sound as good as advising, because advising already gives the connotation that people want to hear what you have to say. And if there's one thing that anyone at any job wants to add, is someone with interesting things to say, right? Or someone who has things to bring to the table, right? So instead of saying I sold luggage, I advised different clientele on luggage choices, and what's the benefit? Right? There's two types of benefits, like if you sell luggage, right? Benefit is the person gets the best type of luggage that they possibly need, right? So if someone's a light traveler, they get a carry-on so that way they don't have to worry about check-in fees, right? But the benefit should be more focused on your company, right? So advise customers on a close individual basis on luggage necessities to increase sales by X%. Awesomeness. Right? So what you can say is, when you're selling luggage, the benefit could be sold the company X amount of money, or made the company X amount of money. It's a very tangible benefit. It's like, if we want someone in sales, we should get someone who actually has sales experience and proven sales experience, right? Because people can be salespeople, but not necessarily good salespeople, right? We all know this. Right? Not everybody is a salesman, right? Any questions on this? No questions? Because, this can help you out. Because this is something you have to do on your term project, right? This is like something that I'm going to be grading on. So this is your opportunity to say, like, this is what I do. What's up?
So this is, I don't have a question, but I'm trying to understand better. Like,
what's
what
up?
you're trying to tell us is to basically give it a synonym to what we do that is better, that is more...
Not necessarily better, but usually people pick an adjective that's not as good as it possibly can be.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? So in no way am I trying to say, like, your job sucks, so make it sound better. Like, I'm trying to just say that, people sell themselves short all the time, right? Like, for example, I'm not telling you like since you're a garbage man, right? If anyone, so let's say someone here is a garbage man. I'm not saying that you should make yourself sound like a waste engineer, which is what a lot of garbage men call themselves, right? A waste management engineer, right? That's basically you dressing up the fact that you want to hide the fact that what you do every day is just pick up garbage, right? I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that anyone's job is worth less or worth less than others, or they have to dress things up and they have to kind of like package something that's terrible, right? But the package that you set forth in and of itself is terrible, right? Because people sell themselves short. They're like, nobody wants to hear about me, doing what I do, right? Nobody thinks that I'm that important, right? And it starts with you guys. If you don't think you're that important, then what's to say that a recruiter thinks you are, right? That make sense?
So this is more of the more or less of the language you use to describe what you do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. And if anyone, and you're going to get an example resume, right? Like, it's great to write this down and to listen to what I have to say,
Okay.
but you're going to get an example resume. So I need everybody's email addresses at some point before the end of the semester so I can show you guys what a good resume looks like, right? But I need you guys to think about this because this is going to be what you do repeatedly, right? So like 3 to 4 different job descriptions is going to have to be written like this, right? 3 different bullet points per job description, right?
Another question.
Yeah.
You said not to make the resume so long.
Yes.
So how many jobs can you put there?
How many jobs can you put there?
As experience, like
Not necessarily 3. I would say 3 to 5.
3 to 5.
3 to 5.
That would
So
be like the max jobs.
5 would be max. So what I mean by this is like if you only have 2 jobs, then you have to put more bullet points, right? It just makes sense because you need to fill that page, right? But if you're on the opposite problem where you feel like your resume is running out of space, you need to put only maybe 2 of the most important bullet points per job, right? And if let's say the last job that you had is let's say like a lesser position that you currently have right now, right? Maybe put 1 bullet point at that last job, right? Just to show that you have that experience. But and also it's assumed like if let's say you have a lengthy history of work experience, it's assumed that there will be more work experience, but they just want to see the most recent, right? Because yes.
Is it a good or a bad thing that you have like 5 jobs?
No. I would say it might be a minor red flag if you have had 5 jobs in 1 year, right? Minor red flag. What's up?
That's understood.
It's understood, right? It's kind of like you're in a relationship with someone else, and you're like, oh, I've had like 5 girlfriends in 1 year, right? It's terrible news for that other person, right? So it's kind of like, you have to focus in on that. But if let's say you've had like 6 or 7 in the span of 5 years, that's totally normal, right? Even more so than that, right? Any other questions?
So to do with the content too.
Exactly. I mean, like, there's also ways to kind of like address that type of stuff as well. So like if you took like freelance jobs or contract jobs or things that were like temporary and not necessarily like full time and stuff like that, you can actually mark it as your title. So for example, before I got hired, I put title and then in parentheses I put consultant, right? So that way people would understand that if I only had the job for like 2 or 3 months, that I was just a contractor there, which was like a short-term basis, right? Now, like I said, it has to be 1 page only, right? So use your bullet points accordingly. But if you have 3 jobs, three job experiences, you're going to put 3 to 5 bullet points per job, right? Cool. All right. So, sure, nobody else has any questions. Everyone's good. Cool. So let's take a break. Let's come back at 7:55. And then we'll go into the dessert part of your resume. And we have a couple more.